Hey, it's Jaime. I have a quick money and time saving tip for you. Have you ever heard of a postage meter? Well, I never really cared that much about postage until my personal assistant ended up having a baby. And I've been the one lately to go to the post office, wait in line forever, drive back and forth. It's been a pain in the butt. I had no idea how much time was being wasted doing this. In fact, 15 minutes a day, if you were to add it up, ends up to be over 7 days in a full calendar year. Imagine what you could do with that much time. Plus, I've actually partnered with a company called NeoPost. They have a postage meter, and you can save 6% on first class mail also. So if you're excited, go to neopost280.com/million with the promo code million, MILLION, which I hope you can spell by now. And if you enter your zip code right there, you'll see if you're in the right place in order to have 6 months free of your postage meter by NeoPost. So go to neopost280.com/million to go check it out. And I hope it saves you time and money and frustration from waiting in line at the post office forever. Have an amazing day.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to The Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jaime Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I'm Jaime Masters, and today on the show we have Paul Kemp. He is also a podcaster. Make sure you go check out his podcast. It's called the App Guy Podcast. It's been running for over 5 years. You can also check him out at theappguy.co. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Paul.
Thank you for having me on, Jaime.
So, podcaster to podcaster, I really appreciate this. So, number one, you've been having your show for a really long time. Why even start it to begin with?
Well, it's wonderful because I was actually working in a corporate banking at the time, several years ago, and I decided to get out of that whole thing. I had a kind of midlife crisis, as many of us do, and I was looking for things to do, and I was kind of struggling. But then I decided to hone in on my strengths, and one of the strengths I've got is I'm really good with people, and I love finding out about people and meeting like-minded folk. So I decided to start the show. I started my first one from Dubai, where I was taking a mini retirement at the time. And here we are. I'm on 523 episodes and 5 years strong.
Congratulations. Now, normally you don't hear people say, I had a midlife crisis, so I started a podcast. It's usually not what happens. But how did you end up doing the app stuff then? Was it the podcast was before or after the business?
Well, I was involved in technology because I love technology, and the iPhone was fairly new back then. It was getting a lot of attention. I absolutely fell in love with it. I had my first iPhone around about that time. And so I wanted to do something that was related to apps. There are very few dedicated shows about apps. If you go and search the App Store for app podcasts, there's only a few. So I really wanted to do a show about apps. I mean, I actually thought I'd struggle getting 20 guests, and here we are on 523 different guests on my show, all pretty much dedicated towards the app space.
See, yeah, I didn't think I could get any millionaires either. Look at this. Look at us now. The funny thing is, though, is that why do you think that is? Because I feel the same way. When I look up anything having to do with apps, it was really hot for a while, and then it sort of all fell off. But yet there's more and more. So why do you think that trend sort of tanked?
Well, I'll tell you why it's fallen off in a way that it's fallen out of the press, but
Yes.
There are so many fascinating, unbelievable stories. And I know how you love stories. So one of my early episodes, it was episode 92, I was chatting with what's become a really good friend and a very high impact on my life, a guy called Andreas Cambanis. And he was telling me a story of submitting his app, which became like a top 6 app. And he was submitting this from a bus in Peru. The bus had chickens on it, and he's climbing some mountain, and he's trying to get this remote internet signal, and he submits his app, and it goes straight up the charts. He makes tens of thousands of dollars with this app, and he's staying in a location that only cost him $1 a night. And I thought, I've got to meet more of these people. So that's really what kept me going, is just meeting these fascinating individuals.
So let's actually dive into the actual creation of the app, because I came from software too. And usually you try and do like an MVP or a beta or something in general before you release it to the entire world. And I know there's a process for that, but how do you know whether those apps are going to go to the top of the charts and or not? Are we just sort of throwing stuff out to see what sticks, or do you do a lot of testing beforehand?
Well, I can tell you that it's actually fairly straightforward to get up the charts in the App Store. I mean, I've been involved in like a number 2 hit on the App Store, number 1 hit with a music app, number 2 with a health app. And when you have a paid app, it's fairly straightforward. You need probably like 200 to 300 app downloads per day. That's all to get into. It depends on the category, but that's not that many to get into the charts. So if you have an audience behind the app and it's ready to eagerly download this app, it's been waiting maybe a few weeks, then you can get into the charts. And I've got some like interesting ways to get apps up the charts as well and get a good buzz around them. If it's a free app, then it's a whole different ball game. It becomes so much more challenging to try and get that attention, given that the App Store is dominated by Facebook and Google and Apple itself. It's really hard to compete with those guys in the top charts.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So yeah, tell us how to make the buzz so that way people, because I'm assuming we can sort of leverage some of these pieces into regular business stuff too, or products in general, or is it just app specific? So how do you create that buzz?
It's again a very challenging question to ask, because how do we create buzz? We just copy that blueprint. But one thing I would sort of urgently request anyone listening to do is, if the apps gets people all completely crazy. People think that building an app and launching it is just like the most innovative space, but also it can be like you can end up burning so much cash. And I've interviewed founders who have lost hundreds, if not millions of dollars on the creation of apps. So in terms of building a buzz, I've found the best thing is, first of all, do not build the app until you test the market. You can test it quite easily now, put a landing page up, just get some initial attention to that, put it onto Reddit. Or,
yes. Okay. Walk us through that whole process, because everybody wants that piece, because I don't think people do enough foundational stuff. They're like, oh, let's go in and try this. Oh, we asked people. Oh, they said they wanted it. Go, right? So let's break this down. And if you have any stories of anyone's that you've done, whether they've worked and or not worked, because I feel like there's a gray area in this world, and most people don't understand what makes a hit, the foundational side, right? And what people say at the very, very beginning before you actually create the app, and what doesn't make a hit that you don't actually create.
Yeah. So in terms of the marketing, then I guess the first thing to do is start with the avatar of the end user, who is using the app, and get some really good feedback from a test audience. Build something that you can actually build apps that only go on specific phones. You can demo the apps at a very early stage. Before you launch them, you could do soft launches and then the full-on hard launch. So you can get like a bare bones app, even an app that almost mimics an app but is actually a website, and get some really good test feedback from your potential users. I can't believe how many people don't do this. How many people don't even speak to anyone apart from their own family about their app before they launch it? It's crazy. I've had stories on my podcast where the developers have gone into Starbucks and just said, grabbed somebody and said, look, I'm going to buy you a free coffee. Can you give me 10 minutes of your time? I want to go through my app with you. Get like some, and actually seeing someone else go through your app is a wonderful, experience. And because everything that you've been working on for a year, you're like, well, of course they don't know where this button is, or, of course they don't know where to press, because it's their first time seeing it. So seeing it through a new user's eyes as an early MVP, as an early app demo is critically important.
So how many of those do you need to get then? So you're going to Starbucks and buying a bazillion, right? So how much is enough data before you go?
Well, I've spoke to very successful app entrepreneurs who've had just one person who they've done that with, just one, because they've built an app for a very specific, unique, person, and they've rolled that out. But the more you can get, the better. So yes, if you can get like a few hundred demos, then and actually that is your potential audience as well. If people are excited about your app, if it's a consumer-facing app, And actually, one thing we haven't spoken about is not all apps are particularly just consumer apps. There are a lot of enterprise apps, business apps as well, to help professionals and business people.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in just a second, because that's a huge market that nobody actually talks about, software-wise and app-wise. So, okay, let's continue on if we are going to create this and we feel like we've talked to 25 people and they all think it's pretty cool, right? And they told you to move buttons, the UX is doing pretty well. So you're excited, right? What are those next steps to really make sure that this works? Because it's a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of everything, especially for you to try and get all the buzz that you want to get. So how do you know, like, okay, I'm going all in on this one, or this one I'm going to try and do way more marketing than any of the rest of them? How do you know?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, I don't think going all in is probably a wise choice as well. You can actually get some of the key features of the app, make the app actually very, very specific to the problem you're trying to solve. I've learned from my 500 odd episodes, solving a problem is still as relevant in the app world as it is in the software world and any kind of business that you approach. So is it solving a particular pain point, a problem that the users are facing? And then once you do that, and once you've got that kind of problem that you're solving, build an app that is almost like only focusing on the very few features. In fact, try to take away features, because there is something called feature creep. I don't know if you've heard of that, but feature creep is where you just add on, because you can do so much stuff with apps now. They are supercomputers in our pocket. So you add on all these different functionalities, and before you know where you are, you've built something that isn't relevant. So making sure that you don't have feature creep is another really important lesson to do. Build those apps with minimal features, and then do a soft launch to an audience that you have already prepped in advance, using all the techniques from previous guests. I'm sure I've spoken to you about pre-launch of a product or service.
Okay, so before we get into pre-launch, because I think that's really important, how do you figure out key differentiators? How do you do that USP, especially when you're trying to make less features? And there's probably a lot of other apps that are quite similar and or have over features. So how do you make sure that you're not just one of many in a sea of the same?
Again, it's really hard. I'm actually thinking back to an episode I had with the founder of Rebel Hack, and his whole business model is about watching users go through the app. And the biggest way of getting more downloads, in a way, is figuring out those bits within the app that are the best features that users want, figuring out where to ask them for reviews. Getting a whole wave of early reviews is also very, very important. In fact, let me give you the algorithm that Apple tend to use. It's not scientifically proven, but we do know that the algorithm is based on three things. The first thing is the velocity of downloads. Within the first 7 days, they actually reward you a little bit more for each download. So that's highly important. The second thing that Apple do, and I learned from a wonderful episode with Wes McCabe, who's from a company called Tower Sensor. The second thing that Apple do is they look at reviews, and so it's the number of downloads, the reviews, and then the velocity of downloads. They're the three things that you tend to try to work on to get the maximum amount of benefit from Apple's algorithm, the way they put your app in the App Store and showcase it.
Just like a podcast. Yeah, it's kind of a pain in the butt in general.
Oh,
so
right,
you're like,
you're the expert.
Go. Well, I mean, what's crazy though, I mean, I know, and this is when we're recording it, that for many, many months, Apple has stopped the new and noteworthy list. Like it put a froze on it. So what sucks is you now go, okay, this is what it is. Fingers crossed, when I actually launch it, it's still going to be that. And that's the thing. That's a pain in the butt, especially because we're working on platform specific stuff like you're doing. You're going, okay, iPhone, let's fingers crossed, hope that this all goes well. Do you really pay attention to other like the other app stores besides just Apple?
Well, I tend to focus on Apple because a lot of the entrepreneurs seem to start with Apple. iOS is the playground for many of the individuals I actually end up interviewing. I mean, there are very successful apps that only focus on Android. To be fair, Apple and Android, I mean, they're the two. I can't even imagine there's an app store for others. Although I did have an episode where we talked to some interesting some entrepreneurs who are building apps for the other teleco companies who are trying to get into this space, because everyone's seeing the success of the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, and it's pretty much 50-50 between the two of those. These other telcos are trying to get in and create their own app stores. And you can get some really good success in cloning your app and putting it into other app stores, which is another often overlooked feature as well, in terms of like, at least then you don't compete with so many people, because, there's tens of millions of developers but it tends to be iOS that I focus on.
Awesome. Yeah, well, distribution, right? You might as well get in front of the same amount of people with the same stuff if you can, if it doesn't take too much longer. Now, a question though. So let's talk about pre-launch really quick. And then I want to go into the point of the longevity, right? Because yes, the big bump at the beginning, the launch really matters to make sure you've got enough people using it. But then afterward, like even you have 500 podcast episodes, right? Like you have the big bump at first, and then you actually have to keep doing it, and you actually have to keep trying to grow it. So let's talk about pre-launch really quick, and then I want to talk about the longevity side. So what would you do pre-launch wise to really set yourself up, and how long of a pre-launch?
Okay, well, it tends to be like several weeks in terms of pre-launch, getting a pretty cool little short video, a website, a landing page, building up an audience through all the techniques I'm sure you've spoken about.
Yeah, tell me what though works. Yeah, so I want to know what works for apps best.
Okay, so like building up an email list, getting onto other people's email lists, approaching high influencers in the space. So, for example, like I know a lot of Slack communities where we know the owners, the admins, and they can actually post to their admins. I mean, Slack was actually one of the apps that was most mentioned last year in terms of the popularity in the app.
How do you get them to say yes, though? Like asking high influencers is tough for people. How would you even go about doing that?
Well, to be fair, the easiest way is just to get to pay them. You just can pay them, and many of them have a newsletter, and they'll have like a little sponsored feature, so you can actually just pay to go out to their audience.
Tell me more about this. I don't think people talk about this enough.
Yeah, well, money talks. And so, like, given that you are likely to spend, tens of thousands on Facebook ads, possibly, it's very worthwhile pursuing the payment of Slack communities and influencers. I've paid in the past anywhere between $200, $500 for maybe up to 4 announcements into different communities. So it can range, if you go to someone who is they should have at least an email list of 2,000 to 40,000, which makes it worth it. And you can get that.
How do you find them? Like, how do you find so I get the influencers, that seems a little bit easier in the specific space or having the same avatar. But how do you find like the Slack communities or the people that actually have a newsletter that you can pay them?
I guess one of the big themes to come out of my podcast is the value of your network. And that's why I've been really building up my network. So the best thing is to put an email out to your network, either through LinkedIn. One thing I often do is download the emails from my LinkedIn, go through all the people I know, put them into an email list, and then email them out big challenges that I have. One of the big challenges could be that I am looking for influencers to email out for the announcement of a launch of an app. And to be fair, like if the story's good, the pitch is good, the idea is good, then you'll get some good responses.
So you email out your I want to see like an example of what this is. Number one, that's really impressive that you're willing to email friends and influencers, right? What your biggest challenges are, and what does one of those emails look like, and can I see one, and what happened? I want like one of the stories from how that worked for you.
Yeah, okay. So let me just give you one that's a very recent story. I am in the process of launching a service that builds stickers apps, because the problem I'm trying to solve I mean, I'm actually taking my own advice, which is rather strange, as in the space. But I've seen a problem. The problem is that a lot of these platforms like YouTube and Facebook and others allow you to build an audience, but they are now sort of really messing creators around, because especially YouTube, YouTube's ad revenue model is becoming very challenging for the creators. So the creators are looking for alternative ways to make income. Some of them, do stuff offline like sell T-shirts. But my big idea, I'm happy to share this with you, is that these creators need to have a sticker app so that people can share like something that's unique to their tribe, to their community. And so like usually it's cartoon figures of the creator itself, the things that they're talking about. You'll get 40 odd stickers in this app, and then they can sell the app for $2.99 on the App Store and keep 70% of the profits. So I'm trying to meet with top influencers. So what I've done then is I have extracted my emails from LinkedIn, put them into a service. A service that I love at the moment from my good friend called Martin is getreview.co. And then I can email a very lovely like challenges to the top. I've got about 2,500 LinkedIn connections. So I email 2,500 people and just saying, look, we're connected. I've got a big challenge right now. I am seeking YouTube creators and influencers for my stickers apps. Can you help me out? Do you know it? Now, the thing I use is, do you know anyone interesting to talk to? So I'm not sort of overtly asking them for a sale. It's not a cold call pitch. It's just asking them for help. And given that I'm constantly giving back, helping, doing introductions, then, a lot of people do help. And so I did that. And only like this week have I had some really good responses. One of them, in fact, from one of my ex-guests. I'm very good at keeping my network alive and healthy. And this contact has 60,000 developers. He's on the board of the Developer Alliance, and he wants to help out. So that hopefully that gives you enough specific detail on how to.
Is there any way we can see what that because everybody wants what those emails look like, because they're afraid to send something that's too pitchy or too not or something like that. Can I get that actual challenge email so we can see the way you worded it? And maybe my audience will be able to help you too. So there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's quite easy. You can go to the app guy and look at some of the past issues, and you'll see. I'm actually quite public about putting my challenges down, and you'll see some of those. I think it's issue number 12 is one where I pitch that I've got a big challenge with regards to stickers apps, and that's the one I got a good response from.
Killer. See, I love this stuff, and people won't necessarily think to go, oh, I'm just going to tell absolutely everyone, 2,500 people at once. Yay, go, right?
Yeah.
But hey, saved you so much time comparatively to reaching out and going, oh, on Facebook, who do I know? And messaging them specifically. I love that. Okay, so let's actually dive in really quick if we can to what you were talking about, the enterprise side of things. Right? Because I feel like software, SaaS companies, all that stuff is hot right now. Everybody wants to start a SaaS company. It's crazy. And so it's funny that we figure that regular software and apps are so different, right? So how do you integrate that, or how do you create or find the people that need software as a service on the app side of things? Or not even, it doesn't even have to be a SaaS company, but software in general, the proprietary stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that, Jamie. There is one more thing I just wanted to mention on the previous question, in terms of the launch. I did do a recent episode with a guy called Dmitry Dragilov, and we talked extensively about how to get like influencers and press and lots of examples of actual emails that you can reach out to top influencers and get their reaction. It's a wonderful way of making connections and getting what you need. So answering your question and about like the business of it, one of the wonderful lessons I've learned from the podcast is to look in the business world for lots of examples of people still doing things the old-fashioned way, and I'm talking about Microsoft Excel. Any business that is still requiring the use of Microsoft Excel, that is somewhere where you can look at and absolutely really make a big difference in the market, because these companies are, there's so many of them. And I've got like a story, but it's not a particularly nice story for all of your.
Good, I like it.
I don't know. Yeah, it was quite a controversial episode I had. I stumble across these app entrepreneurs, and I don't know how they just. I get quite a lot of solicitation from potential app entrepreneurs, and I just agreed to interview this guy. He discovered that the health industry do experiments on mice. Which is pretty nasty, but it's a $1 billion+ industry, like the inventory for these mice, right? Now the inventory is still using Microsoft Excel to like keep track of all these poor little mice that go to labs. So he built an app to actually keep hold of this inventory. Now, it's a completely bizarre example, but if you can think at that detail that's a problem, I mean, there's got to be a lot better opportunities out there to figure out, which businesses are still using Excel, and to try and work out what an app can do that's much better.
So why an app, and why not a web, like an online web API or something like that too? Because if you go after somebody and go, oh, I can help your Excel, why? And they're currently using laptops, why is an app better?
Right. Not always. Yeah. So you ask a really good question, because one of the big lessons as well from all these interviews is an app is not always necessarily the best answer. But the reason it is in many of these cases is because it's on you. It's right there in your hand. You pull out your phone. It can be used by all the different employees who have smartphones. And the fact is that it's always on you, whereas a laptop, it might be in your office, or it might be you have to go upstairs if it's your home. A phone is on you all the time. So any particular business needs that require like an immediate response. And the fact is, we often forget these are not just laptops in our pocket. They are supercomputers. I had a wonderful example of interviewing a guy. His name is Christian Ruffet. And what he's doing is and this is a business application, right? Let me give you a wonderful story, okay? And these are the sorts of things that I discuss on the podcast. I think it's episode 510.
How do you remember what episode they are? All right, go ahead.
I just love what I do. And so I'm speaking with Christian, and he is reminding us that, an iPhone is a supercomputer. And so he has a way of putting what they call an SDK, which is a simple piece of software, into apps that are relying on the geolocation. Okay, and what he can do is he can detect like the small vibrations, even like when you go over a pothole in a car. He can detect that from the phone. That records a piece of data. He gets the data. He aggregates the data up. And he then sells that data back to the local governments, who are very interested in where are the holes in their road. How cool is that?
What? The world that's weird that they're tracking that close, right? But the world that we live in, that's nuts. Because data is a big thing, right? And so whoever collects the most data wins. At least that's what it feels like right now, right? Because everybody wants the information that we have. How the heck does he come? How did he connect those dots? Because I think that's what's interesting. We're entrepreneurs. We have lots of opportunities. We love looking and finding opportunities. That sounds so crazy to connect those two dots. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So he's using, I'm not saying he's using my themes, but he's certainly using the themes that I've learned. One, he's trying to figure out a problem. The problem right now is monetizing apps. And so what Christian has done is that he has figured out there must be an alternative way of putting stupid ads in these apps that none of us like. Okay, it's a bit like I don't have any more ads in my podcast because I just no one likes ads, and so he's overcome that problem by saying, look, the data is incredibly important. Now, telecom, like, is another example he gives. Telecom companies are desperately wanting data on how good their 3G signals are and 4G. Yeah, so he will use apps that are sort of using the location, and you agree to these things when you accept the app to use your
when
location.
You read yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now,
that's why mine are all turned off. Yep.
I don't think there's a privacy issue because, at the end of the day, he's aggregating the entire data up and then selling it at an aggregate basis to the telcos to say, look, you may have a problem with your coverage in this location or that location.
Jamie's over here, go stalker. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. But what's happening is that he's getting paid by the telecom companies for that data, and he's giving a cut of those revenues back to the app developer. So he's overcoming his core problem, which is how to make money from an app without an ad.
That's genius. I love it. Yeah. All right. I know we have to start wrapping up in just a second, but what I wanted to talk about before was that longevity piece that we didn't get to. So how do we make sure that it keeps going? Because no offense, we're excited when it launches. This is with any business. We're super excited, podcast, whatever it is. And then it just sort of goes on forever. So how do we make sure that longevity and we keep growing in general?
Yeah. Jaime, it's a really big challenge. It's one of the reasons why I actually try and make my podcast as genuine as possible, because there's so many entrepreneurs, especially, fall in love with the app space and think they're going to be the next WhatsApp or Instagram. Those are all really wonderful stories, but they're like, it literally is now 1 in a million chance with the App Store, because there's over 1 million apps you have to compete with. So it's actually easier to win the lottery than to make money with apps. So the first thing I would sort of stress is, I'm guessing, ask yourself the question before you build an app: what do I want to achieve? If you want to achieve a monthly income that's reasonable living, then there's a whole wave of wonderful developers and business entrepreneurs, appreneurs, I like to call them, who are living off the revenue streams of the App Store, and they do partake in App Store optimization, ASO, which is a bit like SEO, but for the app stores. And you can maintain a very nice regular income from a regular download. It's not going to be a blockbuster like Instagram, but it is going to give you, and certainly gives me the lifestyle where you can take mini retirements. I've taken mini retirements to Bali and to Dubai and other places. So but in terms of keeping the app going, then it comes down to the press, getting free press, appointing a press agent. I know some very interesting people that get you onto some excellent podcasts and some into some blogs and into the tech news and all sort of stuff. The other thing is really make sure the app has a viral element with the end, because apps are incredibly viral. And you can make apps even more viral by having a viral nature within the app, whereas, for instance, you have to get someone else to download the app. That's the way you can keep downloads going.
Do you have any data on the press agent stuff? Because a lot of people are like, oh, go on podcasts, right? This part. Go on blogs. And then when we actually, because I work with clients, when you actually go do that, sometimes it's hit or miss. Sometimes you're like, wow, that one gave us this many new whatever, which was amazing. Let's do that more. But you don't totally know. Do you have any data or anything like that on how we can tell what works versus what doesn't work beforehand? Or we just hire one of these guys and cross our fingers and go, hopefully this will work?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of my own experience in terms of the actual number of downloads. So I am I'm in the top 10 of the world's most active makers on a platform called Product Hunt. And hopefully many of your listeners have come across Product Hunt, but I've launched many apps on there. If I get onto Product Hunt, then I can get anywhere between 300 to 1,000 downloads. Sometimes I've had occasions where I've had about 5,000 downloads, but that's off the back of about 20,000 visitors. So it's a really good conversion rate. And so that's Product Hunt. I've been very, very good over the last few years of getting featured and by Product Hunt and actually getting those downloads. So there's one data point I can share with you off the top of my head in terms of number of downloads.
That's amazing. I'm sure people are like, so how can I buy that from him? So that way, right?
Well, the wonderful
I'm sure
thing
that
is
took a
it's
lot.
not,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Product Hunt is I mean, it's how I worked with one of my good friends from the, I met him through the podcast, and we got this number 2 hit, and it actually beat Grand Theft Auto in the App Store, and it beat Snoop Dogg on Product Hunt as well. And it was a wonderful, big, huge spike, and basically because of that, it's kept going. It's a wonderful app, a health app, and it continuously is in the top 5 of the health category on the App Store.
What is it, if you don't mind me asking?
It's called Fit Men Cook. Fit Men Cook, and I've got a blog post how I was involved in the early launch of that.
Nice.
So
the app's not for me. No.
Well, that's the thing. Fit Men Cook is for everyone, and that's.
I need to find a fit man to cook. No. That's awesome. But did you know it was going to be as big of a hit before you did it? Or were you like, oh, this is going to be big?
To be fair, I didn't actually take any of my own advice on that. I was asked out, and I had these strategies, and we used the strategies. There was a number of different strategies, and I'll happily share with you a blog post. It's still a very relevant blog post, even though it was from a few years ago now, and it certainly was a big spike because of certain Product Hunt and Reddit, and then the influence of Instagram with the founder.
See, it just depends on which industry you're in. Like Reddit is huge for so many places, and Product Hunt is huge for so many places. But it depends on what industry you're in and what you're trying to sell. There's different ones of these amazingly huge audiences, and you just have to figure out which ones work the best for you, and then not game the system, but you know what I mean? Use it to your advantage, I guess we could say in general. So I'd love
just to summarize on that, Jamie, I know you're wrapping up. Just to summarize on it, there's the reason I do the podcast. I mean, I'm up to 500 and something episodes, and I'm still trying to find out the whole thing about, which works, which doesn't. And it's just a never ending cycle of information about how we go about it. So it's whatever works for your industry.
See, I feel I ask people that I interview, and I work with my clients so I can see the data on the ground, right? Because I'm always trying to know what's working right now, right? Let's be more efficient in our marketing dollars. Let's be, let's try. It's a game. It's a fun game, thank goodness. But it's more of a fun game when you work with clients, and then you get all sorts of data all back at once, and you can sort of see the whole landscape of the way it goes. But it's constantly changing.
If you've never gone on Product Hunt, then you should definitely go onto Product Hunt. And it is free, but my advice is to get a big influencer to post you. And that's where I do have a good network of influencers who I work with on Product Hunt. They've posted us. We've got some really good traction. But it cannot be gamed. It really is then a case of the community has to like the app, and if they do, wonderful. You get this wonderful. And in fact, I've had an app that I've put onto Product Hunt. 3 to 4 days later, Apple featured it in the App Store, and it became a top featured app in the App Store. So Apple are actually looking at Product Hunt to see which of the cool apps to feature.
Well, and that's what's so amazing is you can't just have a big company go and pay a ton of money. It's actually I tried putting a post on Reddit, and I was just asking questions, and they're like, you're not part of this group. And I got kicked off, and I was like, oh, I used to be a Reddit user. Come on, guys. I was asking a question, right? But they are so particular, which I think is good, because nowadays anybody can quote unquote game some of the bigger systems. And that sucks. You don't want people to just buy their way onto whatever it is, because all the little guys get squished, and even the better apps might not necessarily make it that way. So I think it's an amazing thing. But again, like you said, it takes a lot of time and effort to know all the influencers to really try and make sure that it works instead of actually gaming the system. Who knew? When you actually do it right, it kind of works. Well, it takes a long time, I'm sure. 500 episodes later, right? All right. I know we have to start wrapping up. So I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone, and it's what's one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's certainly the thing that has helped me the most in my journey towards a million, and is take whatever revenue. Sadly it's nothing to do with what I've discussed, nothing to do with apps, but I'm going to give you my best tip. Take whatever revenue they have right now and lock in 10% and put it into an index fund. And aggregate that over time, because every time I look at the shares that have accumulated as a result of all the stuff I did in the past, it really is the route to becoming a millionaire. So whatever income they have, lock away 10%. It goes into a very low-paying index fund that tracks the stock market. And you diversify that and just ignore it. Don't sell it. Don't trade it. Just keep it. And over the years, you will end a millionaire, that's for sure.
Man, there's so many more questions that I want to ask about this, because we have debates and not only my household, but in general over, do we go business? Do we go real estate? Do we go investment? And which do we, anyway, that's a total side note, but I really appreciate that. I agree 1,000% on the 10% profit. It's been coming up over and over and over again. Please save your money, people. That's the whole point. You can make $1 million and spend $1,001 and you're not a millionaire. I don't know what to tell you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Tell us where we can find more about you, where we can sign up for your podcast and all that fun stuff.
Sure. It's very simple. Type the appguy.co, and you can then see and get free access to the 500 plus interviews with all founders. Or alternatively, just search Paul Kemp in your favorite podcasting app, Paul Kemp, and you'll see me all over the place. But particularly the app guy is what you need to look for.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show today. I really
Thanks,
appreciate
Jamie.
it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And if you want to check out more amazing resources, I'm only curating the best of the best. Go check out eventualmillionaire.com. You can take the Eventual Millionaire quiz, figure out where you are in business and what you need right now. Plus, you can look at curated resources specifically for you on the new Start Here page. I'm so excited. Please join us. Please let me know if you need anything at all. I'm here for you. And have a fantastic day. Bye.